There are 185 people on death row in the state of Texas. This is part 9 of the series. Robert Will, 45 years old, 21 years on death row. Will, who was attempting to break into a car in Houston on December 4, 2000, was being pursued by a white male police officer at the time. When the officer got close to Will and started to restrain him, Will shot the officer 7 times in the head, killing him.
Even though I didn't commit this murder, I was doing stupid stuff, hanging around idiot people, and I'm responsible for that.
One of the neighbors called 911 saying that there's a theft. A patrol vehicle arrives at the scene a few minutes later. Deputy Michael Kelly was in that patrol vehicle, and also Deputy Barrett Hill. When they arrive, Rob and Rosario, they both begin to run away. About 20 seconds later, the dispatch tapes show that Deputy Hill had Rob arrested and in custody.
I ran away. I mean, I saw someone get killed. Yeah, I'm running away. Yeah, I'm getting the hell out of here.
We know that Rob was shot in the process in his left hand, right?
At the time of trial, it was the state's theory that Rob had this firearm before the murder, somehow shot himself, handcuffed, and miraculously freed himself of these handcuffs. The problem with that theory is that no gunshot residue was ever found on Rob's right hand. No DNA evidence linking Rob to the crime. And there's been no eyewitness testimony discovered that links Rob Will to the crime.
Linda Carty, 65 years old, 21 years on death row. A 25-year-old woman's residence was broken into on May 16, 2001 by Carty and 3 other co-defendants. 2 other victims were beaten, duct-taped, and left inside the house while the victim and her 3-day-old child were abducted. The 25-year-old woman was put in the trunk of a car after being hogtied with duct tape and having a bag taped over her head. The victim suffocated to death. Perry Austin, 64 years old, 21 years on death row. After admitting guilt to the murder of 9-year-old David Karim Kazmuz, Austin was given the death penalty. On August 19, 1992, David Kazmuz left his neighbor's yard and headed toward his house when he vanished. Austin had served almost a year of his parole after being found guilty of aggravated robbery, attempted essay, and essay in Dallas in 1978. In this case, family members were among the victims. He met Karim Kazmuz while working as a drug courier for a street gang in Houston. Austin believed Karim, who was 16 at the time, had stolen from him when some of the pills went missing. Austin killed Karim's younger brother in retaliation. Perry Williams, 43 years old, 21 years on death row. Williams was found guilty and given the death penalty for killing and robbing Matthew Carter in 2000. Carter was returning a video to Blockbuster and heading back to his car on September 17th at 11 p.m. According to court records, Williams walked up holding a gun, told Carter to sit in the passenger seat, and then he drove away. After stopping the vehicle, he shot Carter once in the head and stole $40 from his wallet. At gunpoint, Williams and 3 others took jewelry and wallets from 3 other people that evening. Irving Davis, 41 years old, 21 years on death row. In El Paso, Texas, on June 4, 2001, Davis followed Melissa Medina, then 16 years old, as she left a party. Davis led her into a playground of an elementary school where he killed her by strangling and striking her in the head with an unidentified weapon. Additionally, Davis essayed her. Alejandro Betancourt stated in his deposition that he worked for the Anthony Independent School District's Maintenance Division. He and a colleague found Medina's body on the school grounds early on June 4, 2001. The tips of her fingers were severed and her face was black and swollen. Ronald Pribble, 51 years old, 21 years on death row. Pribble was found guilty of the shooting deaths of Nilda Tirado, 24 years old, and Esteban Steve Herrera, 29 years old, Tirado's fiancé. According to testimony, Pribble shot Herrera, essayed Tirado, shot her, and then set her body on fire to destroy any DNA evidence. The smoke caused the deaths of 3 children, the couple's 22-month-old daughter Jade, Tirado's daughter, 7-year-old Rachel Elizabeth Campion, and Herrera's daughter, 7-year-old Valerie. Ronald Hamilton, 46 years old, 21 years on death row. On November 7, 2001, while committing a heist in Houston, Hamilton and one other defendant killed a store employee. Hamilton carried a firearm into a convenience shop. Ismail Matalka, 36 years old, was fatally shot by Hamilton, who then also shot another Iranian man, 38 years old, in the chest. The cash register was then taken by Hamilton, who then departed the shop. Robert Roberson, 57 years old, 20 years on death row. Roberson asserted that he found his injured 2-year-old daughter Nikki on January 31, 2002, after she had fallen out of bed. For treatment, he brought her to Palestine Regional Medical Center. After that, she was brought to Children's Hospital in Dallas, where she passed away on February 1, 2002. Authorities detained Robert Roberson and charged him with capital murder in connection with his daughter's death. He was accused of violently shaking and abusing Nikki, causing severe injuries that ultimately led to her death. Pete Russell, 50 years old, 20 years on death row. He was found guilty of Tangela Brewer's murder. Brewer was a police informant in addition to being in a relationship with him. She brought D.K. Bush, an undercover drug police officer, to Russell's home on May 2, 2001 and introduced them. Bush was about to purchase several ounces of crack cocaine from Russell. The two met and carried out the deal in a store. Bush gave the order for Russell's arrest to additional policemen. Russell was given a 10-year sentence. He agreed to surrender on September 7th when the judge rescheduled the hearing. He killed Brewer on August 13th for setting him up.
I think that my case will be overturned, maybe a full reversal, maybe just a punishment phase, and that eventually I will go home. I will have to do some time. I'm not saying that I'm innocent, let me go. I'm saying that, hey, I did something and I should be punished for it. But what I did doesn't warrant a death sentence because my case, legally speaking, for as Texas law, doesn't warrant a death sentence. It carries 2 to 20 years. My case is a crime of passion, a manslaughter case. So yes, I took somebody's life, and again, I should be punished for that according to the law. It's like somebody that's a drunk driver and they run over somebody. They don't send them to death row, because it's a manslaughter, but they do some time for it, they get in trouble for it. And so that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying to excuse what I did, but I don't think that I would be executed. This is what I feel within my heart of hearts.
Terrace Sales, 44 years old, 20 years on death row. Tyron Butler, 33 years old, who saw a gunfight at a Houston mall parking lot in February 2000, was killed by command of Sales, who ordered friends William Herschel Austin and Cheryl Kissentainer to kill Butler. In Houston, Texas, on July 21st, Butler was tragically shot when he was stopped at an intersection. After setting up surveillance on Butler, the prosecution claims that Austin fired the fatal shot. Randy Halpern, 46 years old, 20 years on death row. Halpern was part of the Texas 7, a group of inmates who escaped from a South Texan prison in December 2000 and went on to commit a number of robberies, including the one in which they shot and killed Irving police officer Aubrey Hawkins, 29 years old, during the robbery of a sporting goods store. One of the 7 prisoners who fled committed suicide before the group was apprehended. Halpern and another person, Patrick Murphy, are on death row, while 4 others have already been put to death. Ray Freeney, 50 years old, 20 years on death row. Freeney brought his girlfriend to a motel on April 18, 2002 in Houston, Texas, where he essayed her and fatally stabbed her. A second female victim was attacked when she entered her home, and she was stabbed and essayed till she passed out. After leaving that house, he picked up a third victim and brought her to his house, where he choked her until she also passed out. He essayed her and repeatedly stabbed her after she woke up, killing her. David Renteria, 54 years old, 20 years on death row. On November 18, 2001, Renteria kidnapped a 5-year-old Hispanic girl from El Paso, Texas, choked her to death, and then burned her body. At around 5:15 p.m., a store video camera caught the victim leaving the building with an unidentified male. Her parents realized she was missing very soon, but she was nowhere to be found on the store premises. Her body was discovered on November 19, 2001, around 7:10 a.m. in the East Alley of 1220 North Oregon. At the scene of the crime and from the victim's person, tangible evidence and latent prints were gathered. An autopsy found that the cause of death was manual strangulation.
5-year-old Alexandra Flores walked into this Lower Valley Walmart to go Christmas shopping with her parents and siblings, and she disappeared.
Baby, we miss you. When you home, baby. Come home, baby.
Her parents made a desperate plea for her return on our 10 o'clock news that night. The chilling moment Alexandra went missing was caught on surveillance camera. A little girl in a red dress walked out of the store, led by a man in a dark shirt and white cap.
There's no way that somebody can go into a store and take a 5-year-old child under everybody's nose.
14 hours later, an early arriving employee found the nude, burned body of a lifeless little girl in the parking structure at a West Central doctor's office, more than 15 miles away.
Our first question for police was, is this body of Alejandra Flores, the 5-year-old that disappeared or was abducted from a Walmart at Americas and Alameda last night? Right now, the police are saying they don't know.
But it was Alexandra Flores. The medical examiner determined she was strangled. The attempted burning came after her death. No evidence of assault was found. His name was David Santiago Renteria. He had turned 32 3 days after Alexandra was kidnapped. About a decade earlier, Renteria had molested a little girl who was close to Alexandra's age. He lived down the street from the Walmart. Police had photos of Renteria, hand and fingerprints, even his shoe size. The prints matched. David Renteria was arrested and tried for capital murder.
It only took him 129 seconds. 129 seconds for him to do the shopping he wanted to do on the second visit to Walmart. He goes in and he walks out with that 5-year-old.
The emotional trial gripped the community, which came together to support a family that had to relive the most horrible time of their life.
Those are the kind of cases that really affect any human being.
Patrick Murphy, 62 years old, 20 years on death row. While attempting to flee the TDCJ Connolly unit on December 24, 2000 in Irving, Texas, Murphy and 6 co-defendants fatally shot a 31-year-old white male police officer. Murphy was part of the Texas 7, and we spoke about his other death row co-defendant earlier in the video. John Rubio, 43 years old, 20 years on death row. The 3 children of his common-law wife, Angela Camacho, Julissa Quesada, age 3, John Rubio, and Mary Jane, age 2, were beheaded on March 11, 2003, and Rubio was found guilty by a jury. Despite having fathered Mary Jane, John Allen Rubio treated all children as his own. Rubio acknowledged killing his kids and claimed he did so because he believed they were possessed by the spirit of his deceased grandma. He acknowledged to drowning, stabbing, and beheading Mary Jane Rubio, John Estefan Rubio, and Julissa Quesada. Rubio's brother phoned the police, who arrived at the family's apartment to find the youngsters dead. A large trash bag had been used to contain the two girls, and the little boy was on the bed.
We couldn't understand what Rubio did to those little kids, you know.
It wasn't easy for Minerva Perez to share her account of the night of March 2003. Just steps from her home on Tyler Street in downtown Brownsville, 3 children were beheaded by their own mother, Angela Camacho, and her common-law husband, John Allen Rubio. The remains were found in plastic bags inside an apartment in this building, with Rubio and Camacho still inside the apartment, claiming they had been possessed by demonic spirits to kill the children.
It's very hard because there were a lot of people and people were screaming, and you know that it couldn't happen at the Imperial.
Alejandro Mendoza remembers he once saw Rubio pick up one of the children by the throat because he was crying. He says the night of the murders, police asked to go to his backyard where his dogs were, fearing a gruesome scene.
A lo mejor les dieron carne.
He says they wanted to see what the dogs were eating because they thought Rubio and Camacho had possibly thrown out the kids' bodies to the dogs to get rid of evidence. It's these horrific memories that haunt neighbors here, and although abandoned, the building where the murders happened still stands and is a constant reminder of the tragedy. For these neighbors, there's only one solution.
I think it's time so they can tear it down, because there's a lot of people, they go in that building and they don't respect it. I think it's time to the mayor to do something.
Marcus Drury, 44 years old, 20 years on death row. Drury was found guilty in 2003 for the Halloween 2002 kidnapping, robbery, and murder of 20-year-old Skylar Brown in rural Brazos County. Skylar was a former classmate of Drury's at Texas State Technical College. According to reports, Drury killed Brown by shooting him 3 times, burnt the body, and then dumped it in a stock pond. Drury stole the victim's money, phone, pager, and drug bag.
Here we have an update on Bryan Death Row inmate Marcus Drury. He will have another hearing to see if he's competent and fit to die for his crime. That ruling came down today from the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. Drury had an originally scheduled execution date of August 1st, 2012. For the Halloween 2002 shooting death of Skylar Brown. Drury's lawyers say he is schizophrenic and lacks a rational understanding that he's going to die. There's no timetable for that competency hearing to take place.
He was declared mentally incompetent to be executed, but he remains on death row. Walter Sorto, 46 years old, 20 years on death row. In the East End area of Houston, Texas, 2 women and 1 teenage girl were murdered in 2002. Edgardo Rafael Cubas Matamoros, a citizen of Honduras, Walter Alexander Sorto, a citizen of El Salvador, and Eduardo Navarro, a kid who was just 15 years old at the time of the crimes, were the 3 perpetrators. Esmeralda Alvarado, 15 years old, was a sophomore in the 10th grade at Lamar High School. She vanished on January 18, 2002 after leaving the home of her boyfriend. The 3 criminals abducted her, essayed her, then shot her in the head. Her body was found on January 22, 2002. The other murder victims, waiters Roxana Araceli Capulin, 24 years old, and Maria Moreno Rangel, 38 years old, worked at the El Mirador restaurant in the East End, which Capulin's family purchased in 1994. The bodies of the 2 women were discovered in Capulin's car on July 1st after they vanished on May 31, 2002. They had been shot to death and tape had been placed over their mouths and eyes. Tomás Gallo, 48 years old, 20 years on death row. The morning of December 11, 2001, Gallo was watching over his girlfriend's 2 girls. That afternoon, Destiny Flores, 3 years old, was discovered with more than 200 internal and external wounds, a 12-inch skull fracture, and signs of a brutal SA. During the trial, a medical examiner had testified that the child had been kicked, punched, and apparently bit several times. She sustained organ damage and rib fractures. William Irvin, 57 years old, 20 years on death row. On February 14, 1987, in Harris County, Texas, Irvin broke into the home of a white woman who was just 24 years old, essayed her, and fatally stabbed her. Nearly 14 years later, he was linked to the victim by DNA testing. Michelle Denise Shadbolt grew up next door to William David Diggy Irwin. Irvin's parents had been Shadbolt's family friends. They had even brought them coffee and assisted them in removing the blood-stained carpet and furnishings from their daughter's house. Irvin had been playing with her kids since he was 4 years old, according to Shadbolt's mother. Guy Allen, 60 years old, 20 years on death row. An individual was given the death penalty by a Travis County jury for the April 2002 murders of his girlfriend and her daughter. On March 15th, Guy Allen was found guilty of the homicides of Barbara Hill and Jeanette Johnson. In her Austin home, Hill, 47 years old, received 46 stab wounds. After trying to intervene and call the police, her daughter, who was 19 years old, received 10 stab wounds, and she died as a result of those injuries. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.